Good evening. The webinar will begin in a few minutes. Please take note of the housekeeping items on your screen prior to us getting started. All participants' video and audio will be muted. If you are a junior or senior high school student, please rename yourself for the scholarship drawing this evening. Good evening and welcome to the Parent to Parent webinar, a parent discussion to help high school students plan for after high school graduation. My name is Nick Boudre, the supervisor of career and college programs at St. Clarissa, also representing Blue Otter College Access Network, or otherwise known as BWCAN. Tonight, we're going to continue the message delivered by our panelists on our previous webinar, College ABCCs, a look at associate, bachelor, credential, and certificate programs for after high school graduation. The message that evening was that there is no one size fits all model for all students and all families. The career progression is much different for each planning family, and that's why you're here tonight. To continue the conversation, we have a great panel for you that's going to help you better understand the process, the financial planning and scholarships, as well as share their personal stories of planning their son and daughter's pursuit for a post-secondary education. The format this evening will be about 30-40 minute discussion with the panelists, followed by a question and answer period where the audience can ask questions at the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the panelist discussion as well. Some questions to consider this evening as you hear each of the four panelists talk. What stage is your career and college planning at this evening? Secondly, what level of education and training do your son or daughter need to obtain in order to pursue the career of their dreams? And last, when and where will be the starting point for the education and training. Without further ado, we'll move to our first panelist. Our first panelist, Martin George, comes from St. Clair County Tech and is an alumni graduate as well. Please welcome Martin George. Martin, you are an alumni. Tell us about the program that you attended at St. Clair Tech.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I attended the St. Clair County Tech Center, and I went through the automotive technical program back in 1988, graduate, I should say, 87, 88.
Very good. And your son, Avery, did as well. Tell us about that.
Well, it's funny. I didn't actually select it for him. It's something that he chose to do, but he surprised me by going to an open house, and he chose the auto tech program as well. And he graduated last year. He's a COVID 2020 graduate.
Very good. And so we had a great discussion, and we're going to dive into that right now. So he followed you to St. Clair Tech, graduated high school, and then where did the conversation go from there with your son?
Well, I'm sure it's the same conversation many people have had during this COVID cycle. He started floundering, and he didn't know where he wanted to go to school, or if he was going to go to school at all. He was going to try and, I guess you would say, hang out and put the college on the back burner. He had entertained the idea of going to Macomb Community College and commuting, and I told him how difficult that can be considering the weather conditions and all the other things that we have going on here. He thought about getting an apartment with a friend or friends, and no, that was a no-go. No. And then dialogue started increasing, and we started talking about pursuing going to school altogether at college, and he said four-year college wasn't for him. But he said he would go to a technical school. So then the search began. We started off at Macomb Community College, Washtenaw. We drove down to OTC, viewed what they had during the very beginning of the COVID cycle, which made things extremely difficult. And he didn't like that. And so we started pursuing other places all over the United States that offered auto body, not auto tech. That's what he wanted to do, auto body. And the curriculum had changed a lot. I'm a Ferris State graduate myself out of auto body, and they didn't offer it anymore. So we wanted to find the best school with housing and that would give him a good structure. So my wife and I searched, and my son searched, and then we found Wild Tech. Now, mind you, we had been talking to people at different places via Zoom on a regular basis. One Zoom meeting, I think, was about 3 hours. So it was hard, but we gathered ourselves together. We ended up flying out to Colorado in June. And then we drove up to Wyoming and we toured the school, and it was fantastic. At least from my standpoint, it was fantastic. And he was all in. He was talking to students. He exchanged phone numbers. He was talking to the instructors. Instead of having to look at our tour, we were there for 4 hours, and then we're getting ready to leave. And then the CEO pulled us aside, and he told us his story, his dreams about why he began the school. And it was phenomenal. And we went back to the hotel, packed everything. We get in the car, we're energized, and we're leaving Wyoming, and we get into Colorado, going to catch a flight out of Denver. And he says, well, I don't think I want to do it. And I was like, we spent X amount of dollars to get here. And my wife she almost wanted to climb in the back seat with him, and I kind of had to let her relax. But we came back here to Michigan, and he thought about it a lot longer. And his biggest concern was the finances behind it. And come to find out, he did the Skills USA, and he had qualified for a $10,000 scholarship. So it took his amount of money that he was going to have to pay and significantly dropped it. And then he ended up, we did a loan for him for $16,000. And drove him back out there in September, and he's loving it. Fantastic. The best choices that he's ever made. And he said he would like to be an instructor.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing, that quick overview of a long process. And
It was,
well, that was a few minutes. There was a lot that went into that planning. So
yes.
let's rewind a little bit. So he gets the tech. What did he start to figure out when he was at tech that got him Avery to where he is today?
My son has always been very good at school, honor roll student. But when he got to tech, he found out things that he could do with his hands created him a better reward, and it was in line with a lot of his thinking. He had this mechanical aptitude that a lot of people don't have, and it was easy for him. So then he started getting better and better, and at the tech center he got accolades for his achievements. And so then he got to thinking, and I don't know if you guys all know, but our kids watch YouTube like crazy. So he started watching these videos about people buying cars and flipping cars, and how they started off small and then grew to astronomical proportions. And he decided, I'll take auto body. So then he'd be a trifecta. He'll have the educational background. His school offered a business degree, which he's achieved. And he'll also have auto body, which means he's a one-stop shop type of situation.
That's great. And so then, he's finding success in high school. He's going through the program for tech. And then, he's kind of waffling, and there's a lot of different decisions like that you threw out there at the beginning. What was it like for a father, to not only support him, but work him through that decision-making process?
It was very frustrating. I think the most difficult portion was trying to communicate in a way that he could understand and relate to without seeing like we were making the decisions for him. I wanted him to have total ownership in the decision because it's his future. And one of the sticking points was a girlfriend, a significant other. That was a portion. The other portion was he wanted to go and get academics, but he didn't want to spend time spending money in other areas that he felt would be needless and it wouldn't apply to his dream, his ultimate goal. And he was trying to find something that was streamlined and fit him better than the other situations. I have a 4-year degree. My ex-wife has a 4-year degree, his mother, and many of families have 4-year degrees. And for him, that was not the route he wanted to take.
That's well. And then you put in, your family did as well, a lot of work. I mean, you kind of went right through the narrative, but you went from state to state, not only in schools in Michigan. Talk to us a little bit about what that process was like, not only for your Avery, but also for your family to be doing that.
It was taxing because during the COVID cycle, that was another hurdle because we had to find out who we could meet face to face, where we couldn't, and get coordinating. 3 of us, my wife, my son, and myself, all in the same place at the same time for Zoom meetings. And then also finding out of the schools, the most important thing was that their standing was good in the automotive sector. Because and then we had to find out, okay, if that's true, let's go visit the school. And I didn't mention to you the other day, but we actually flew out to Washington D.C. too. So wow. we were flying, and it was definitely a struggle because what we were finding out that although people were saying or individuals were saying that they offered certain things, he would start asking questions, looking at equipment, and it wouldn't meet his expectation. So ultimately it was his decision, but this process started in, I would say, January. And the first time we drove down to OTC was April. So then fast forward to Wyoming in June, fast forward to taking him out there in September. So that was a 9-month almost block of time that we were chewing up.
And Martin, as a father, just to wrap up just a quick segment here before we move on, as a father, not only seeing him find his passion in high school, but then pursuing it, and then even coming to you about possibly even being an instructor like yourself at Tech, what's that feel like as a father?
Oh, it feels pretty good. I I wouldn't say, welcome to the family business, but the thing was that somewhere along the lines, he kept telling me, Dad, you're really good with students, you're really good with kids. And, why don't you just leave what you do alone and invest? And I didn't think that was as important as it would be. And for him to recognize that he's setting other people up for success is fantastic.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Martin. We'll come back to you during
Thank
the
you.
question and answer period. Let me get you here. All right. Our next guest comes to us from Marysville High School. Tom Velko is the retired assistant principal and athletic director. Tom has over 30 years in education and 20 plus years as a school administrator and has helped countless students and families navigate this process. Tonight, Tom will be sharing his family story and his two daughters, Madison and Devin, and their journey to college. Please welcome my friend and my mentor, Tom. Thank you so much for coming out of retirement and joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So Tom, Maddie and Devin, they both attended and graduated from Rochester College, but which is known now as Rochester University. But their path to graduation looks the same, but the journey to get there is a lot different. Talk to us about each of their paths after graduating from Marysville High School.
I concur a lot with what Martin said. We did a lot of visits. My oldest daughter, Madison, we visited, approximately 10 schools. She wanted to be involved in basketball with the basketball program, and then also had to find a school that had a nursing program. Her ambition was to be a nurse. So, we just started to go through visits, and we ended up, it was a part of an athletic recruiting process too. And she ended up deciding to go to Rochester, well then college, now university. But before that, she didn't want to leave right away. So, she kind of knew she was going to go to Rochester down the road, but we had conversations, and she just decided, said, Mom and Dad, I want to stay home for a while. And SC4 obviously was in the recruiting mix as well. She loved the coach there. She went up and played with them some and had a good situation. So she ended up taking that route and going to SC4 for 2 years. Didn't cost her a penny. So got all her gen eds done. Didn't cost her a cent. So obviously that made Mom and Dad happy as well. 2 free years of education. Had a great experience, got to play out in the nationals. So it was, it was very rewarding for her. And then Devin, my youngest, was 2 years younger. So when Maddie got done and decided to go to Rochester, Devin and I, the same thing. We traveled in-state, out-of-state schools. Both of them knew they kind of wanted a smaller liberal arts school. So it ended up, it just kind of fell together that they both at the same time enrolled at Rochester at the same time. 2 different routes, obviously.
Very good. And so the process of visits, much as like Martin talked about, we are in the COVID era right now, and that's changed a little bit. But you guys went out of state, as you mentioned, too. Talk a little bit about, the visits and what the girls felt when they went to them, and then what that was like for your family traveling together all those times.
It was, we really enjoyed it. It was usually just myself and either Madison or Devin. And because we wanted to visit the schools when there's people on campus. And we wanted, most of them involved a basketball practice as well. So my wife worked during the day, I could get time off. So we traveled most of the time together. It was great daddy-daughter time, a lot of time in the car. Several days we visited more than one school in one day to try to cut down on the travel. But the process overall was enjoyable, I thought. And it's a lot of time, but we did our due diligence, and they're going to be there for 10 to 12 hours a day for 9 months a year for 4 years. It's a huge decision, and you hear the success rate, and it's not high of people that go and stay for 4 years. And I think that a lot of that is, they go where mom or dad wants them to go, or where uncle wants them to go, or where somebody else went, or where their friend goes, and it doesn't work out. They need to get on campus. We knew that, and when the athletics is involved too, it throws another wrench in the works. We wanted to meet some of the players and meet the coaches, and that's an important relationship as well. So, but the whole process, although, like Martin said, is trying at times, it was really an enjoyable process.
And Martin talked about this a little bit, but you and I have talked about this on countless occasions. Not only the feel of going to a campus and building relationships and making sure that's going to be your home for the set number of years, but you and I have talked a lot about the financial side of that and the packages and, the scholarships. And then you look at what it would cost to go to that college or university. How did that play into their decision-making process?
Well, I assume, like it was for us, money is probably the biggest obstacle in a college decision. And I didn't want my daughters to graduate, with $50,000 or $60,000 in debt. I just don't think that's fair. I think too many people do that now, and you're behind the 8 ball right from the start. So we looked at all the packages, we looked at all the awards, obviously filled out the FAFSA. And we ended up, both of them got their 4-year degrees. Luckily, academically, they were good too. And one thing I did notice through the whole process of visiting the different schools, it was kind of all relative. The state schools, the public schools typically don't give the amount of aid. And the private ones give a lot more, but they're a lot more expensive. And the bottom line was usually within a few $1,000s. It really was, whether the school was 50 grand or whether the school was 20 grand, like Michigan State or whatever. It ended up, by the time we got our award letter, they know what people can pay, and they keep that competitive. So I would say that, don't let a private university, because you think it's going to be expensive. I mean, go and get your award letter and see, and you'd be surprised. I mean, we ended up 2 girls going through 4 years, and I think one owes $15,000 and the other one might owe 18, so it's very doable. They had a little bit of vested interest in the loans, but they're not in debt, forever either.
And Tom, it's a great segue. I mean, I have a few more questions for you, but next up, we also have someone that's going to talk a lot about the FAFSA. But you and I talked about this the other night when we were preparing for this evening. Getting that letter started with the FAFSA, and your both daughters filling. Madison was filling out for the first time, but that was able to give you the information you needed, correct?
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of parents, it can be, they think it can be overwhelming. I was in the schools. I had been in the schools for 25 years and started the process, and I still talk to our counselors saying, what's the process? What do we do? But once you get into it, it really is not, it's not as difficult. They made it a lot easier. And I would say, when it opens in October, just get it done. Don't worry about the tax piece now. They have the tax piece that you can roll right into it. And the biggest thing that does for you, it allows you to access to the loans, to the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And, we didn't get financial aid per se, but that opened up the loans for us.
And we'll touch a little bit more on that with our next guest. But another thing, Tom, in 20 years in education, you've seen a lot of students follow their passion and a lot of pathways, to get there through the education and training. What advice, for the families that are here tonight, could you give them for the conversations that you had with your daughters and for the process?
Well, I think you have to have some good, honest conversations. But I also don't think you need to paint yourself in a corner. There's a million 18-year-olds that don't know what they want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. You should have a plan, A, B, C, and a fallback plan after that. And if you don't know, Madison, knew she wanted to be in medicine somehow, some way. Devin knew she wanted to be, either a vet or would deal with animals in some way, but there's so many different routes that can go. And if you don't know, look at the junior college or community college, get your gen eds done. You'll do it a lot cheaper. A lot of times you can live at home and save money doing that. So, then as you get older and see more and get more experience, you'll find a niche, and the best, what's going to give you a happy career is you can find a niche and make money doing that. Find a passion and make money doing that. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you got to reroute when you're 30. It's just, but don't let that paint you into a corner. Saying, well, you're going there and you're going to do that. That's not going to work out.
Well, I'm going to touch a little bit on this too, because we could probably have a whole webinar about this. Being a student athlete, I know you were one in high school and in college, and both your daughters were, at the community college level, and then both at Rochester. What was that experience like, juggling, being, watching them juggle basically 2 full-time jobs?
Kids now are typically, at Marysville, our students, most of them came at 7 and left at 7 at night. They were all into something anyway. They're used to it. I think idle time sometimes is the hand of the devil. So if the more you can occupy them, the better off they are. And, I think that structure, they were both driven students. They were both top 10 students in high school. And so I think it helps. All the research says it helps. I don't care if it's athletics, could be band, could be any of your passion, could be automotive, anything like that. To do that in academics, both, I think is very important. There's too many statistics out there, to argue against that. You need to have a passion along with the academic piece, I think.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Just as I mentioned to Martin, we'll come back to you during the question and answer period. We're going to move on to our next guest. Now is coming to us from St. Clair County Community College, is no stranger to BWCAN webinars. Joe Casara, Director of Financial Assistance and Services. This is her second webinar of this year, and countless events that we've had throughout the years. I just want to give a special thank you to Joe, because not only is Joe supporting St. Clair County RESA and BWCAN, Joe is a huge advocate for students and their families when it comes to the financial assistance and services for not only SE4, but for all St. Clair County. And honestly, I can text or call Joe at any time of the day, and even for this webinar, and she's readily available. So thank you for joining us again, Joe. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you for your kind words, Nick. Glad to be here.
Tom, we didn't have it set up, but Tom really did a nice job setting up.
He did.
The FAFSA plug. And so FAFSA, I know there's a lot of acronyms in education. What does FAFSA stand for?
The FAFSA form stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So like Tom indicated, financial aid falls into several different categories. Most of us say, well, we didn't qualify for financial aid. Well, we might not qualify for grants, right? We all want free money if we can get it, but it does open the door to lower interest rate loans, and loans are a type of financial aid. So when the colleges are talking about financial aid, we're talking about grants, scholarships, loans, and employment opportunities. So, we heard from both Martin and from Tom that our students are taking out whatever aid they can get, whether it be athletic scholarships, whether it be grants, whether it be loans. And money does a lot of the time impact what college or university the students end up attending, in addition to that fit being right for the student.
And, we're in the middle of a good Michigan winter right now, in the month of February, but this is a really important month. Is there a specific date for students and families right now that they need to be aware of when it comes to the FAFSA and state programs?
Yes. So right now, especially if the student is planning on attending a Michigan college or university, and if they come now some schools are going test optional, but the state programs have not yet. So especially if it's a student who does well on test taking or is strong academically, I want them to try to fill out the FAFSA form by March 1st. So I know that's Monday. And you're saying, Joe, how can I do that? But the reason I'm doing that is because the state has two programs, the Michigan Competitive Scholarship, that is both based on the SAT test score as well as financial need. And it's available to public and private institutions in the state of Michigan. And then the tuition grant, which is for private institutions in the state of Michigan. The tuition grant is not based on the SAT test score, but it is based on need. So while not everybody will qualify for that, if we think that our son or daughter has a shot at it, or for those who are students on the call, if you think you have a shot at it, try to fill it out by March 1st. If not, you want to fill it out as soon afterward as possible. Okay, and be aware of any deadline dates your schools might have that you're looking at as well.
So if you're a senior student or a family of a senior student right now, it's not too late to do the application.
Absolutely not. And as Tom indicated when he was talking, the FAFSA has gotten easier over the years. I've been doing this for a very long time. And for our seniors that will be applying for fall, so you're filling out the FAFSA form for the 21-22 academic year. And that FAFSA form will be based on your 2019 taxes. So we filed those a year ago. So you're just simply getting in there, you're answering the questions, and you can give permission to the Department of Education to access your income information from the IRS website using the data retrieval tool. So you don't even have to say, oh my gosh, this is intimidating. I don't know how to do this. I pay to have somebody do my taxes. That you can just have it transfer. The data retrieval tool works for most students and parents, as long as you type your address and everything exactly the way it's in the tax return. But if it doesn't, Nick, you've heard me say this a million times. I don't want you to pay somebody to help you fill out the FAFSA form, whether the student is coming to SC4 or not. We will help the student complete it. So we just, it's a pandemic, so we're meeting with students virtually or phone appointments. But if they have their tax return with them, right, we can guide them to what line to look at if that data retrieval tool didn't work, and say, look up the information on your tax return, what's on this line, and put it on the FAFSA form.
Okay, perfect. Well, I transition right to my next question. So then the students and families that have applied for FAFSA already and submitted their application, they're not done yet. What should they be doing right now?
Okay, so a couple of things. So depending on the type of school that they're applying to, and I encourage students, because money is part of that equation, don't not consider a school because it's a private school that costs the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, right? You want to apply to all schools that you're eligible for or interested in, and then see what kind of package you get. You want to make sure that the financial aid office has everything that they need to complete that financial aid file. So was the student selected for verification? If so, they're going to need to provide some documents to the institution. So students need to be paying attention to the emails that they're getting now more than ever. So some schools are still sending paper forms and all of that, but a lot of it is via portal, right? Via an email, and you can see your financial aid information or what's needed by logging into the portal. Well, so they need to be aware of that. So I know I have a college student who's 20 years old, been through a lot of this, and kids don't like email. And it's like, look at your email. I'm sure you received something. So you want to do that. So make sure that the school has your financial aid file complete. If they are asking for something, you want to go ahead and you want to submit it. Now is also the time that students should be applying for scholarships. The spring is when most scholarships applications are due. I know that you're going to have Lindsay speak a little bit from the Community Foundation on scholarships, but we work with the Community Foundation to have the same deadline date. So we try to make it less confusing for the students in St. Clair County. So SC4's scholarship application deadline date is March 14th. But find out, what are those deadline dates? There's a lot of institutional aid out there. You want to be applying for it. A lot of our high schools have scholarships that are only available to the students at their high school. So seniors, you need to be working with your high school counselor, with your college access advisor, making sure that you're tapping in to the scholarships that are available. Obviously, the smaller the pool, the better your chances are of receiving that, right? So not saying that you don't want to apply for national scholarships or bigger scholarships, but the bigger the pool, the less your probability is, right? We remember that from stats classes.
Yes. So Joe, and now once we get to this point, we get, March 1st, and we're getting people to submit their FAFSA. Several scenarios will come about, from I haven't heard anything yet to I didn't receive the aid package that we anticipated for that school that we're very interested in, or even, is there any negotiating that has to take place in terms of getting my aid package?
Okay, so first and foremost, and I will throw it out there, SE4 has not started bringing in our 21-22 FAFSAs yet. We're working on it tomorrow. So we'll do our first little test batch with the Department of Education tomorrow, hoping, knock on wood, that it goes well, so then we can bring them all in. So just reach out. Hey, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? So be an active participant. Call the school, ask the questions. But as you said, Nick, students are going to start getting award letters from various schools. Be organized. Remember that when we're talking about financial aid, we all hear words and definitions such as cost of attendance, and schools will break that down for you. So if in that cost of attendance, you're going to have direct expenses and indirect expenses, know what you're looking at. Your direct expenses are going to be your tuition and fees and your room and board if you're staying on campus, right? There will be some extraneous expenses in there, such as transportation or personal and miscellaneous expenses. Yes, the student's going to incur some of those costs, but they're not paying that to the school. Then what you want to do is take your direct expenses and subtract. What type of grant aid is that college or university giving you? What type of scholarship aid are they giving you, right? Because that's the free money, the money that we don't have to pay back. And then take it a step further. All right, now that leaves this much money out of my pocket. Now, if they're offering me a loan, and some schools automatically package or award a loan to the student in addition to the parent, now what does that do for me, right? So you're trying to bring it down so that, as Tom indicated, you're now able to compare 2 or 3 award letters, and a lot of the time it's within a few $1,000s. And if your heart is set on going to a certain school, my thing to them is, all right, I'm working with a student this winter on it who's, reached out and is very passionate and is looking at out-of-state schools, in-state schools, public schools, private schools, you name it. It's anywhere from Case Western to U of D Mercy to Wayne State. It's the Michigan States, the U of M's, they're all on the table, right? Case is the student's first choice, but they came up with great scholarships, but it's still not where the student is wanting it to be. The student then said, what can I do? And I'm like, reach out to the private school. We know that the publics don't change much. Their scholarship endowment is not as big as others, right? So she's like, all right, so I'm trying to help and say, so, all right, if Case is your number one, it's not off the table, but what's your number two? It happened to be U of D Mercy. All right, so what schools are you comparing it to? And she's like, well, I have the award letter from Wayne State. All right, then share that information with U of D, right? It's right down the street. They're now competitors, and say, Wayne State is offering me this, this, and this. Here's my award letter. You've offered me this. In order for me to come there, I need for you to provide me with some additional. What's the worst they can do? That's what I always say. What's the worst they can do? Say no, right? And we all know that students, at least my 20-year-old, they don't want to go face to face, right? Or even pick up a phone and make an appointment. It's all what? Texting and email. They want to hide behind that computer screen. So, you know, I'm like, really, you could just send an email and say, attached is this, can you help me out here? And oh, by the way, this is offered for 4 years. So if you could do it for 4 years, if they say no, it's no. Guess what? She got an extra $2,000 for 4 years. Well, we think it's for 4 years. Because I said, did they say for 4 years? She's like, they didn't say. I'm like, you need to follow up on that. Because now that $2,000 could be what? $8,000, right? And that's the other thing that I encourage students and families to look at is it's not just 1 year, it's for 4 years or it's for 5 years, depending on how long it's going to take them to get the degree that they want. So those are things that you need to be considering. And then you look at, you know, do I have AP credit or is there something else that might help bring that down? I mean, we heard Tom say that his daughter wanted to stay home and went to the community college to help lower those costs, plus was able to play on the basketball team. That's, you know, you could transfer, a lot of schools will say you could transfer up to 90 credit hours or whatever it is. Even if you're only there for a year, every little bit helps. So.
And Joe, we also talk often about scenarios. And one of the scenarios that we often hear, you've heard throughout your career too, and the importance of FAFSA and financial aid, but also in the decision-making process is, I don't need to do the application. We're feeling good about our plan financially, but part of that plan is that college or institutions scholarships. You need the FAFSA to access those.
Some do, some don't. So my pitch is always the FAFSA, the first word in that application is free. Free application for federal student aid. It takes a little bit of time to fill it out. You have people who are there to help you fill it out if you're intimidated by it. So why would you not want to fill it out? So that's my typical speech. But now, after having worked in a pandemic for what we're going on close to 11 months now, almost a year, right? We've seen several programs come not out of just the federal government, but out of the state of Michigan as well. And they are requiring that students could be eligible for it, but they need to have that FAFSA completed. So be a step ahead of the game, fill it out, because then if additional funds become available, right, you might just need to fill out an application. Or I know some colleges, so the CARES grant, let's go to back of March of 2020, when CARES came out, a lot of institutions were just doing block grants. Department of Ed said they have to have a FAFSA, meet certain criteria. The bigger schools were saying, I'm not going to have applications completed. Some did, some didn't. Some did a combination. They're like, everybody who I have a FAFSA form who meets this, here's X number of dollars. Maybe you didn't get a grant beforehand. It got you the loan if you wanted to take it out. Remember, you can always deny that, reject that loan. You don't have to take a loan just because the school says you're eligible for it. But guess what? You just tapped into some extra money because it became available due to an unfortunate circumstance. But it's there.
And that was actually going to be my follow-up question, Joe. And a myth around FAFSA is it's a commitment. It's not a commitment. It's an estimation, correct?
It's so when you're saying a commitment, as far as do I have to take out the loan? No, you don't have to take out a loan. Just because the school says you're eligible for $5,500 as a freshman, you don't have to take it. You could say, I only need 2,500 or I only need 1,000. And then if you notice that throughout the academic year, it's like, you know what, I could use a little bit more. As long as you're still enrolled in 6 credit hours or more, you work with them. And then maybe the following year, you don't need it. You know, I mean, or you say, you know what, I saved money. I worked, I did whatever, I don't need it. And maybe you don't need it. The thing that you have to do is you need to remember to complete the FAFSA each and every academic year. So the forms become available October 1st of the prior year. So this year's seniors could have applied as early as October 1. So you want to apply, you want to get it in as soon as possible. So just remember for the next several years, every fall, you're going to be completed that FAFSA form.
Thank you so much, Joe, for all the wonderful information. I'm sure we're going to have questions for you during the Q&A segment. So I'll move on here to our next guest. Thank you very much, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right, our next guest comes to us from St. Clair County Community Foundation, Lindsay Scheckler, the program coordinator who's been overseeing the scholarship programs for about a little over 3 years now. Thank you for joining us, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm actually new to the scholarship position, but I've been at the foundation for 3 years. So I've been working with these scholarships. They just haven't been my responsibility until recently.
Well, I have to thank all the guests right now. You guys are doing a tremendous job transitioning from one to the next, because Joe mentioned your scholarships as well. So
Yeah.
give us a little bit of an overview, or tell us what the Community Foundation offers in terms of scholarships and funds for students and families.
So we have, Joe mentioned the SE4 scholarships, and while it's kind of confusing because we hold those funds, and last year we kind of handled the scholarship applications, but they're back to SE4. So those are separate, but the scholarship funds that we hold that are just ours, I want to say there's 35 of them, right around there. And they really, like, the range is a lot. There's some super competitive scholarships that are real high GPA, lots of extracurriculars, give you 4 years of support. There's broad ones. You just need to be a 3.0 higher and a Port Huron Schools graduate. We have some very specific ones. There's like a deck or engineering major at the one of the shipmaster schools. We have a new scholarship fund that is for Port Huron School graduates with a 3.5 GPA who are going to Central and are gym teacher majors. So which the nice thing about those real specific ones is we'll get a small pool, right? But there's lots of different ones. We do have a minimum of $1,000 for scholarships. So if you get a scholarship, it's going to be at least $1,000. We don't do $200 scholarships or anything like that. They're at least $1,000 each.
Oh, thank you so much for the information. And you mentioned 35 scholarships. Do students and families have to fill out an application for each scholarship?
So that's the awesome thing. And actually there's more than 35 scholarships. We have 35 funds, I think. And so we'll do multiple scholarships out of some of those. And the nice thing is it's all through one portal. So if you go to our website on our scholarships page, that you just click apply now, and then it's just one application. So when you're looking at those different requirements for the different funds, that's what we have the pre-qualifying questions for. So you'll start right out before you even put in your personal information. You'll start right out by answering those pre-qualifying questions. And those are questions anywhere from, like, are you going to be a deck engineer major at the shipmaster school, to, what gender you are, to what school you're going to, what you're a resident of, those sorts of things, to kind of narrow them down. And then depending on your answers to those pre-qualifying questions, it'll automatically create an application for all of the scholarships that you're eligible for.
So, and that leads to the right, my next question of the components of the application. You have the pre-qualifying questions, but then it moves to a couple other segments, short answer essay, letters of recommendation. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a fairly generic application for our scholarship application. Going to ask for, things like your financial situation, your mom, your dad, whether or not they're college educated, some short answers on things, what you plan to do, how you plan to pay for college outside of this scholarship, listing all your extracurricular activities, whether or not you've had a job. And then there are some short essays, and we just really encourage that on those essays, pick one that allows you to really talk about you as an individual, what makes you unique, what obstacle you've overcome or a hardship that's been in your life, something that's going to set you apart. Last year, I think so with our scholarships, some of them are very specific and they go to a small committee that will look at a small group of applicants. But a lot of the applications, a lot of the scholarships are overseen by our scholarship committee, which is our staff. So we look at a ton. I think we had 211 individuals apply last year. So we look at a lot, right? So just having 4 years of NHS and sports in a 4.0 doesn't set you apart. And at the same time isn't required, right? So we're not just looking for somebody who has met those requirements. We're looking what's unique, what's different, why should we invest in you? We really are starting to look more towards first gen, income needs, different things that I guess that we haven't always been in our traditional scholarships, still taking into consideration, those scholarships that are merit-based, but a lot of the other ones that have some wiggle room, we're really trying to change it up a little bit. But yeah, just making sure that you're putting something that's unique. And then that last section, once you get through those, we do ask for 2 letters of recommendation. And you do the students directly just upload those on there. You don't have to have someone send them in or attach them. I guess we have a trust honor system that you're not going to fake your letters of recommendation. But I do want to remind that you should have not family do those. Surprisingly, we get quite a few each year that, it's aunt or whoever that wrote that letter, but we encourage students to do that ahead of time. Ask your teacher, ask your coach, ask your, youth pastor, somebody, a mentor that can speak to you, that can tell why you as an individual stand out from the others.
And is there a deadline associated with this application?
Yeah, so March 14th is the cutoff date.
Okay, very good. And once again, where can we find the application to fill it out for these scholarships?
So right on our website at stclairfoundation.org, there's a scholarships tab, and right there at the top, and I think even on our homepage, there's a banner for it. It's apply now, and that will take you right to those pre-qualifying questions. Once you've gone through those pre-qualifying questions and you've set up your account, if you maybe get through the first page and then you stop and you log out, don't do those pre-qualifying questions again and start over. There's a little thing in the corner where you can log in. So log back in and you can get back in, and that will take you to make sure you go through all the different sections and be honest about things. We do check into things. If you're not, we've got those scholarships that for specific graduates from specific schools or of going, we're going to find out if you're not. So be honest.
Well, just wrapping up the segment right now is any other advice? I know scholarships can be pretty intimidating. And I always hear that, well, if you're going to apply for scholarships, that's a full-time job. But as Joe and Martin and Tom talked about, it's not a full-time job. And there's so many scholarships out there for that actually are perfect fit for a lot of students and families. Any advice for, going and approaching this topic?
Yeah, I mean, well, the nice thing about ours is there's up to, 35 different funds that you're applying for in one application. So if anything was worth your time, I would say that would be one. And it's, I think, like, reminding to be that same thing, be unique, be yourself. Don't feel like you need to write this lofty, wordy, flowery essay about how you feed the hungry and that's not what we're looking for, right? There's a group of people sitting around the table that are from your community, and they're looking at this, looking for somebody who they want to invest in. And if I can't tell who you are by reading this, if it's a cookie cutter response, it's not going to set you apart. And for those that maybe aren't seniors yet and you still have some time, work on those extracurricular things, activities that are different, that do set you apart, that are unique, that can give you more, like Tom was talking about, more than just your academics. We're looking for well-rounded individuals that are going to be successful, right? And we're also looking for the underdog. We want to invest in the kids that need that money, that maybe don't have two parents at home that are college educated, that are going to walk them through this whole process. Kids that they had to work at, to pay some bills at home, or they had to help out, or they've been through some hardships. Those are the kids. Maybe you've only got a 2.9, but you've had some other things in your life that set you apart. Those are the kinds of kids we do like to invest in.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and especially for that advice to wrap up that right now. So we are going to move to our question and answer segment, because I'm sure that the audience has a lot of questions. And to read the questions, my partner Rachel Verchey is here. You can enter down in the chat feature. Just click there, enter your question. If it's a broad question, we'll put out to the panelists. If it's for a specific individual, go ahead and put, Tom, and then ask the question. But if it's broad, we'll direct it to one or another. So as you think of your questions and develop them and get them entered into the chat feature, I actually have a couple questions that were emailed to me prior to this evening. The first one's going to be for Joe. Joe, there's a lot of deadlines as much as there is acronyms nowadays. But it was in terms of, March 1st, May 1st. I know the answer to this, but what deadline is coming up May 1st?
May 1st is the deadline where students have to let the college know whether or not they're going to attend. Now, you can go beyond that date, but if the college has offered you a scholarship, they can't require that you give them a yes or no answer until May 1. So up until May 1, your scholarship is safe and it's on the table. After that, they may say and start putting pressure on you to pull it off, because now they have to build their class, right? They only have X number of dollars. It's almost like the airline. We always see that they oversell the seats, right? You oversell so that you hope that you have a full plane. Same thing with colleges and universities. They oversell so that you bring in the class that they want. So May 1 is that scholarship piece where you might have to say, yep, I'm really going to come to your school.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually just got one here through the chat feature that is actually a direct message to me for you, Tom. It was in regards to the majors that both your daughters selected, medical field as well as veterinary. Two broad majors. How did you work them through their passions of, liking animals, wanting to be in the medical field, to actually picking their career and pursuing that after high school graduation?
Well, the nursing piece was pretty easy. That's a dedicated program. So and that was kind of an odd deal. My youngest daughter had a kind of a scary situation when she was about 12 and spent 2 weeks down at Children's. And ever since that time, my oldest daughter wanted to be a nurse. She saw what went on there. And so that one, was kind of a pretty easy path. Although we did, with the SC4 piece, we had to go down and hustle a school class at Macomb too, to set her up for Rochester for the nursing program. There was one class that she didn't have. So, there was a little bit of give and take there. And then Devin, she didn't know if she wanted to be a vet. So she went with just a general biology degree. And then now is in a vet tech program. So she's got her degree. And now if she decides she wants to go to school 4 more years, then she can pursue that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Tom. This one, and I'm getting some through the private chat here for you, Martin. What is that, your son's interest in becoming an instructor? How does that feel for you as a father?
That feels pretty good. He has really successful experience out at WildTech, and a lot of the instructors are involved in some of the major shows that you see for flipping rides and modifying cars and things of that nature. And he feels so confident on what he's learning that he could impact someone else. And that, that's just a joyous feeling for me and my wife. Phenomenal.
That's great. And WyoTech, so that's out of state in Wyoming, correct?
Right. It's
Okay.
out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's when we were talking the other day, I had to Google it because I didn't know what so many acronyms for trade schools. And you mentioned another one, OIU, that you visited. What trade or what school was that?
OTC, Ohio Technical College. They have a strong automotive background, offering auto body, automotive upholstery, fabrication, welding, custom rod, engine building, diesel. And it was more of an urban setting, where Wyoming was more rural, sort of like we were raised. And it fits him. Oftentimes he calls me up, he's like, "Dad, I'm in the Rocky Mountains." And he sends pictures. And
Well, I can tell you, I'm jealous that he's out there out in Wyoming. Thank you very much, Martin.
thank you.
Well, unless there's any more questions in the chat feature, we're going to just wrap up this evening. What a wonderful group of panelists that delivered so much information in just an hour's time. So a lot of the students and family are probably asking yourself, where do we go from here? And I'm going to share my screen really quick and give you a little bit of where you can go from here tonight. Because as you heard, it's a long process. It's a process that it's investment from not only the student, but also the family. Well, due to our current times, tomorrow evening, the traditional St. Clair County Tech open house that usually has about 1,000 people come in their doors will be a virtual open house. It's from 6 to 8 tomorrow night. And then students and families can visit up to 3 live virtual program sessions. I spoke to one of the assistant directors today and can actually still sign up for those as well. Next, there's a lot of, I'm sorry, this is the second of the 3 events that guide you through your planning during the winter months. Our next event will be our student-to-student webinar on March 23rd at 7 p.m., which will feature a panel of current students enrolled in 4-year, 2-year colleges and universities, as well as trade schools, and they're going to share their unique experiences. Just like you saw tonight, the panelists are going to talk about the college majors that they selected and also the trade programs that they selected, their day-to-day workload, and balancing school, work, and family life. This is a great opportunity for students to hear from students that they may call their colleagues one day if they choose the same pathway. Next, For all this information and much more, you can find on our new BWCAN website that acts kind of as a one-stop shop for all your planning needs. Here, you're going to find the recording of not only this webinar and the previous College ABCC's webinar, you're also going to find the recordings of our Fall Essentials webinar series that overview of college applications, financial aid, scholarships, and career exploration. The website for this is www.bwcan.org. We also put out a monthly newsletter that provides subscribers with an updated information resources from not only St. Clair County Reese and BWCAN, but also SC4, the Community Foundation, and our community and state partners. And last but not least, all these conversations and planning that you heard today are greatly supported by our counselors in our local school districts and our college advisors. We're very fortunate to have a very strong network of guidance counselors at each high school, as well as these 5 college advisors that can help you starting tomorrow morning. All right, and to wrap up this evening, we have tremendous partner, not only Lindsay giving her time tonight, but the Community Foundation sponsors BWCAN in providing a $500 scholarship each evening that we do these events. This will go to 11th or 12th grade St. Clair County student that's in attendance. And if your name is drawn, we will email you the information and get the forms all completed to help fund your college or trade school training after high school graduation. So without further ado, shuffle around the names here. Let's see who our lucky winner is. All right, Lacey Mays from Port Huron Northern High School, 11th grader, congratulations. We'll be sending out an email tomorrow, and thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for joining us. Another special thank you to the panelists, and look for an email tomorrow. We'll be sending out this recording and much more resources for you and your family. Have a good evening.